it's an honor to be here and joining you today. And while I reflected on the theme of this conference, specifically innovation, inspiration, design in architecture, and through the sub-themes and the intertwined focus areas that it addresses, it basically reminded me how deeply connected culture, identity, behavior, resilience in the region are paramount. So in reality, my presentation isn't going to be about presenting an already done work. I'm actually inviting you more for a dialogue. It's more food for thoughts. I might be having more questions than answers, but I think that's what these venues are for. It's to engage in a dialogue. It's to open up, discussions around what we experience. But there will be a lot of common words that you have heard already from Professor Ali. Connection, community, dynamics, creativity will be coming back in this presentation too. So, but it will be skewed to my background, obviously. And for that, I have to very briefly take you through my journey. I am originally trained as an architect in Algeria, and then went to the School of Architecture in the UK in a building science department when building science and energy efficiency were not a word that we used a lot. Don't ask me when, because that will give you an idea of my age, and I don't want to disclose that. So that was a very long time ago when nobody was talking about sustainability or green buildings or any of that. And then from there went back to education, higher education, and then transitioned to the US to work as a lead AP. And from there, a decade ago, went back to another calling for education and joined the UAE. Maybe this crossing between continents and different practices basically has shaped my way of looking at teaching and at practice and at research. But if there was one thing that is common across all this, was the interest and the focus on extreme hot climate and climate-sensitive culturally sensitive environment. So those have been the common, the connecting thread across all of that work. So let us go through this discussion, and those are picked from the theme of the conference. I was like, if we look at those and how they connect, how can we explore as architect, as educator, what contribution we can have and for what purpose? Because by considering this, we may be stating what we are creating as spaces today, but they will also be shaping what spaces we would like to have for ourselves in the future. So when we talk about cultural identity, obviously it's the backbone of the in architectural design. That doesn't necessarily, oops, going a little faster. Okay. Okay. It is, I think, agreed that identity has a significance that basically shapes the reference to a place. That has created, tension when we practically looked for global standards that were basically implemented everywhere, losing the distinction of what makes a place, give a sense of a place. If we look at heritage, new or old, it usually it embodies, the symbolic, the aesthetic, and the cultural values that are vital for people's identity. Those are not frozen in time, I fully agree on that, but they do shape the identity of a place. And if we do have to, take them as inspiration, we have to document, acknowledge, understand, preserve, because those can serve basically as an element for reinterpretation. And that basically joins back to the same call that was presented. So in this dilemma of traditional cultural identity and global standards, I see them maybe the same way, but expressed slightly differently. They do present challenges, but there are also opportunities. If the goal is to create, is to merge and reinterpret through the creativity, and here I look at mainly all the students because the call is on them to basically reinterpret, then looking into this as an opportunity is more important than just as a reference. The term that many, use, copy-paste, that's absolutely what will not offer a platform for creativity for them. If we take a few of the important aspects that enable us to reinterpret and recreate while keeping a referent, then maybe some of the traditional architectural elements can be used as example, but also more importantly is the connection that may be created in spaces that will basically offer that sense of a place. And then resilience. I think there is no other spaces, no other places that indicate or show as much the resilience by being in terms of its adaptation to the context, to the harsh climate and so on, as regions like here. If I take some of the most known, it's hidden there, the wind tower, the courtyard, the mashrabiyah, you'll tell me, yeah, we know all of this. I'm just bringing them again as elements. If they are used as references and reinterpreted using the functionalities rather than just the shape and the look, then they can be elements that will perform, but be, revisited as will be revisited as reinterpreted with the tools and the capabilities that we have to recreate them. So some of the examples, the wind tower in Masdar uses both the functionalities as well as a reference in terms of verticality, presence, and so on. The mashrabiyah is maybe another, although these pictures do not do full justice to all the examples that have been used for that. But if the reference is the mashrabiyah in terms of, heat control, filtering light, and aesthetics, then maybe it's one of the elements that has been dramatically used and reinterpreted in many different forms, and to a full, from a full building to an element that can control light and operate it differently. Adding to that, I think there is another important factor that we usually tend to not consider as much when we talk about inspiration from heritage, and that basically goes to the color. The semiotic, the aesthetic information that can be conveyed through the use and reinterpretation of colors are really great contributors and can be used as or form a basis for its integration as an inspirational element, not necessarily in the same way, but can offer a basis for recreating the same reference, but in a different way, basically. Another aspect, now, if we come to the behavioral influence in terms of how design influence the behavior and the use of spaces, then I think here too, we will go back to promoting social connectivity and creating places that offer a sense of belonging. And that usually is offered through a set of, or is enabled through a set of parameters using, did I skip? No. This is managed by using a number of factors. I think it's, okay, goes here. A number of items that you work with as an urban planner, architect, or it would be the favoring mixed use, favoring the shading and the creation of plazas and spaces that will enable an integration of greenery, especially in places where this is, not very present. The way these elements are used would encourage would encourage the usage of places, the interaction of people, would foster basically social connections, creating a bonding between communities. Those are aspects that we tend to lose a little more with the car, many different ways of isolating buildings and so on. And these can be recreated in spaces by using very, very basic by referring to a set of parameters like the mixed use, like favoring walkability through the design of shaded spaces, and so on. So another aspect that I think is paramount to the connection and to the behavior is the human-centric approach. I think and that may be based on a number of choices that could be done. Flexibility is one of them. The library was an excellent reference to how thinking of spaces in a flexible usage way is what will is what will encourage basically the productivity, satisfaction, as well as usage of the space itself. Another element that I think architects and interior designers are invited to use to be able to is the use of biophilia, the reference to greenery, to natural material, affects satisfaction, affects productivity, and creates or contributes to mental health and well-being in spaces. So those are other elements that are. Now, in terms of environmental adaptation, that basically is the elements that addresses a number of that are very, very used energy efficiency, integration of renewable, water conservation, especially in places with scarcity when it comes to, for example, water. These are supported by, or could be easily supported by the traditional wisdom of the passive design strategies, and those can be learned but not reproduced from the existing traditional architecture in a context, but reinterpreted using modern application. When you do CFD, and the way you can analyze the performance of your design is today much more easier than you could do it, a few years back. So this will enable designers, architects to test their design and perform and optimize and vary the parameters until you get an element that is performing environmentally adequately in a context with even very extreme and harsh conditions. Other aspects that I think are important when it comes to environmental sustainability is looking into the role of materials. I think we have choices or options to see the material not only as an element to build the building, but it can also be an element that participates in we talk a lot about carbon emissions, climate change, environmental impacts, and the material itself that you're using in your space can be used as carbon sequestration, can capture the carbon emission, and can be looking just the same. So there are opportunities for enhancing this performance much better. The other aspect that maybe is relevant and is embracing not irrelevant, is a must, is embracing technology. I think within this, we have a plethora of opportunities that can be used much more easily than we can think of. For example, in terms of energy efficiency, the smart technology enables you to optimize the uses. Adaptive systems can be testing when you turn on the light and off. This is all readily available. Connectivity, when you are digitally connected to your spaces and you can program them from a distance. All this technology, if embraced and integrated, if the knowledge is there, can be used in a way to optimize the performance in general. So can we think of resilience through innovation? I believe that's where the drive is, through smart systems, innovative or adaptive lighting. Like in this space, we came in the morning and it was so bright that I thought I will need my sunglasses to be able to see the screens. So obviously the screens are there, but what if these screens will automatically operate, open and close according to, the lights that you need? And this is what is so easy now to implement through the smart monitoring. Maybe one of the factors or one of the elements that has gone through a lot of progress and development is the PV panels. Whenever you ask someone about integrating your PV panels, then you can always think of that black, ugly elements that goes into your roof. But if we see the development of the PV panel in terms of transparent, in terms of colored, in terms of flexible, it can go anywhere and everywhere in your building. So it will serve the dual purpose of generating energy, but it can also be an element of the facade itself. It will replace the glass, it will replace, it can play an aesthetical element, it can be partially as a shading element. So the development in these technologies is we're looking at it here just through the PV panel, but every other element is in a developmental phase that if we kept abreast of what's happening, then the options are limitless. Now, another aspect that I think is just as important when we talk about environmental is the link to the landscaping and water management. Obviously, when we think about landscaping in desert regions, we may be looking at or thinking that desert landscaping is not, may not look just as nice as if you have a plain, big area of grass and so on. But the desert landscaping, although I do not have many pictures of what it could look like, can be very inspirational, very very adapted, and creating just as much beautiful spaces. But when you think of landscaping in terms of questions, I would like to take you back to the role of landscape I know we're not into landscape architecture here, but the role of landscaping in context can be just as powerful as building design elements. For example, the context-driven landscape, especially in extreme hot climate, is a must, and needs to be obviously based on native plants, on xeriscaping, on the water management in a way that basically requires low maintenance and water conservation. But when it comes to landscaping, I don't think this is the only aspect to, the only aspect to consider. When we think of landscaping, this can be a way to brand a place. So branding a place and recognizing a place is not only by buildings, but it's also by the spaces in between buildings. There are cities like Singapore, when you think of it, they have so many elements that are landscape elements that basically, when you see them, it refers to that place. So it creates a brand. We can create a brand through the landscaping itself. What about also thinking about our landscaping as seen from above? Many of our cities have skyscrapers and refer to the view from up as the reference. Dr. Iman today was saying, I can only see the parking from my room. Doesn't make sense, and the parking is next to the... So seeing your landscaping from above is another factor that I think calls for consideration. Another aspect that I think, or another criteria that I think needs to be considered when you talk about landscaping and design, innovation, and is to maybe also have to consider about the production or eco-cities or foodscapes. Can our greenery be only for aesthetical reasons? Of course, it performs also in terms of, heat control, and it lowers the temperature and so on. But there is an urgent need to also have production of food in your built environment. Can that be integrated into our landscape? How challenging would that be to include it? Now, the last part is about innovation and technology, and I think here our students are most likely very ahead when it comes to that. Advanced materials, self-healing materials, low-carbon concrete, 3D printing, smart building technologies, simulation tools, and artificial intelligence are all the tools that can be grabbed from the technology, the availability of what's in the in the technology in relation to our buildings. So the smart building is smart building technology based on, for example, things that we're used to: smart thermostats, intelligent lighting, and all this IoT monitoring is there to grasp already. How do we test our ideas? Simulations and modeling tools. Already familiarity, I think in many, you can test your design and view it before you make your decisions. And that's, it presents the benefits of enhancing, the acceptability, and it's there. So in terms of creations, I think we do have powerful tools that can be already put in place. Integration of I'm a little concerned about using the term artificial intelligence. Like a few years back, sustainability was the word that everybody used everywhere. I think the buzzword now is artificial intelligence. A threat or an opportunity, I'll leave that for everyone to decide, but it definitely offers a lot of opportunities to grasp. So more than looking into it as a challenge, I think we have to see how it can serve in every aspect that we're considering here. So it basically eases up the data analysis, it can contribute to better decisions and so on. And I'm not going into the creative part of what I think here there's still some a path to go through. Now, all these aspects that are brought in this conference, innovation, inspiration, culture, behavior, I think they will basically call for every educator to look into how that can be integrated. So when it comes to educators, obviously the call for analyzing traditional principles and reinterpreting them, leveraging the tools that we have into education, and maybe prioritizing the human-centric design. A lot of the environments that have been created sometimes with the human or the people not first in mind lack that sense of belonging that we all basically look for. So that's, and maybe the third or the fourth item that is really critical is to foster interdisciplinarity. Most of the challenges that we have can hardly be solved by one discipline. So most of the time, if we instill, I believe, in our students the ability to look into a challenge with a team from different disciplines, the results are often much adapted and much better. Now, what about the what about the professionals, the architects here? What would be the call for putting these three themes together? Obviously, championing sustainability and being at the forefront of what can be done is key. The cultural sensitivity, I guess that's another factor that needs to be considered. The use of advanced tools, they are there, but they're not widely used when you survey the practice, and looking for making a meaningful impact. I think those are most likely the drivers that should be pursued by practitioners too. Now, I think there is one, I come from education right now, finished with being a consultant or a lead AP a few years, a decade back. I think the power of collaboration across sectors, across stakeholders, is key to achieve, is key to create a basically engaging environment that responds to the needs. So this, I think, if it's instilled in our students through teamwork, through different disciplines working together, may prepare them to solve challenges in a more, in a more adequate way or dynamic way. Now, obviously, we were questioning that within the scope of the conference, but I think one can only basically look forward and say, so what's next? We talked about technology, we talked about, the power of engaging together. What are we looking for? What could we be looking for in the near future? Smart cities is a word that we have already heard enough. It doesn't look like it's very new. So what's next? Net zero is also seems to be a target for many in not such a long time. Maybe the next one would be to look at vertical forests, basically integrating greenery everywhere, or even more ambitious would be to create self-sustaining communities. And that's not just for food, but every aspect that you can think of with a circular approach to every resources that goes into it. Now, what's the future of architecture in the Gulf? Obviously, I have no answer for it. That's most likely, I'm done, almost. This is the one before the last, I believe. I just thought, okay, if I put all together all these thoughts that are, basically triggered by the scope of the conference, what should we look for in the future? I believe that harmonizing heritage doesn't mean copy-paste, okay? And reinterpreting it in an innovative way is what lays the way ahead for us. Resilient environment, this is, I think, not a choice, but a must in contexts like here. And that would be to adapt to, climatic conditions, but also social dynamics, and shape the future. Now, a legacy of resilience, I think by fusing cultural identity with innovation that calls on creativity, as it was mentioned, that will be on you. We can create a legacy of resilience, sustainable, that will honor basically the past, but also bring a future to the region that's adapted socially, environmentally, and culturally sensitive in a way. Call to action, I think no one can solve any of this on his own. So obviously it does involve from architects, educators, practitioners, institutions, governments with set goals to achieve. And students, of course, they have to commit to environmentally sensitive, inclusive, and culturally rich built environment. I'll leave that for a question for you to meditate. How can we? I touched from it from every aspect I could think of, and I was saying, I could have just presented one of the work I already done. But I was like, okay, this conference is bringing these themes together. What's in there in each one of them? How are we called to look into them? How can I infuse that in my education, teaching to students? How can the practitioner look into those and see what are we doing, what's our status, and how we do shape the future that we want to create for ourselves? So, as I said, it's a food for thoughts. It is not a single case or examples of what I've gone through, but I thought this is the critical approach to the theme of the conference that I wanted to share with you. Thank you for having me.